Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Mystery of Your Immunity webinar. Hope everybody's well. We'll get started in just a moment here. Looks like we have another moment or so. Is everybody seeing me and hearing me okay? Go ahead and please reply in the chat box. If you're hearing me, you're seeing me in a little corner of the slide there, the title slide. Good, okay, awesome. Looks like it's 7 o'clock. I'll wait another minute or so here to start. Good, yes, okay, great. Sounds like we are on. All right, guys, as I am speaking, you'll have questions that come up. I'll ask you to go ahead and, hi Bob, put them into the chat box, and I will be available afterwards to answer those for you directly. So, good evening. I won't get things, as I said, I won't be able to answer them as I go necessarily. We'll want to keep moving through the material, but then at the end, I will certainly take those. So please go ahead and feel free to engage. Also, you'll be having a few surveys along the way. I'd like for everyone to please complete those. That kind of gives me useful feedback and keeps us all on the same page. Good evening. Hi, Phyllis. Hi, Suzanne. Hope you're feeling well. And he has been the technical genius behind the improved slides that you're going to see tonight. So he's really helped me to make the images a ton better. So thank you, Jake. I think you guys will have a good experience. Hi, Zara. Good to see you. I guess you can see me. I don't see you. Welcome. Glad you're on. All right, 7:02. I think then what we will do is get started. I will ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. Distractions make it really hard to focus. And I'm going to cover a lot of information. You're going to want to hear it. So please, I've quietened my cell phone. I'm going to ask you to do the same. Remember the good old days? You know, seems like a nightmare we're living through. But remember when we went to parties? We actually went to our friends' houses. We went to graduation parties. We went to weddings. We went out to dinner with friends. We went dancing. What happened to all those? It's just like, my God, are we ever going to go back there? You know, we've all been masked. The whole world, it's like a horror movie from before. Just cannot believe where we're at. You know, those good old days are the ones we want. And I have good news for you guys. We are going to have those good old days, and we're going to go back there. So smile, don't despair. We will get there. So let's talk about this virus. Is this the deadliest virus in history? We're going to discuss that. I want you to take a look at this simple table. And what it is showing you is from January 1 through July 12th, worldwide, the deaths from SARS-CoV-2. So it looks like the number's about 580,000 at this point in time. That's current, actually, even to today. I was just on the internet checking that. I want you to compare that with every year we lose 1.5 million. Okay, that's 3 times as many people to tuberculosis in the world as we have lost this year to SARS-CoV-2. So COVID-19 illness has claimed a lot of lives, but I want you to keep it in perspective. 3 times as many lives are lost every single year from tuberculosis. When was the last time you heard about it? Okay, maybe it doesn't impact us here in the US as much, but worldwide it sure does. It sure does. Even there, though, it's not in the media. You don't hear about it. You know, one of the greatest pandemics that has lasted so long, HIV on the right. Take a look at that. Annual deaths from HIV, 770,000. So about 200,000 more than where we are with SARS-CoV-2 right now. That's every single year we lose that many people to HIV. It has not been cured. We are able to manage people's disease, but we're not curing it. And we are continuing every year. So yes, we have lost a lot of lives. It's been horrible, but I want you to keep it in perspective. We have many worse things going on this planet, and we seem to have forgotten, and all of a sudden we are compelled to shut everything down. You know, with COVID-19, there's been widespread testing of quarantine of not just the people that are positive or sick or even their contacts, but everyone. We are all quarantined. Remember, there's a period of time you were not to leave your house. Stay home, right? Unless you're an essential personnel. You know, some people are concerned about possible requirements for immunity passports in order to travel or go to work, engage in normal activity, or even live with your family. All these things are a serious concern. We're all treating each other as if we are contagious. The virus has certainly taken, as I said, many lives, but the fear, you know, that has been created and the reaction to this virus that governments have taken, the lockdowns, I believe they have claimed more lives than the virus itself. You know, so the cure here has been far worse than the disease so far. We're going to get into this discussion a little bit. Medical care that was deemed non-essential was forbidden altogether, and it's still restricted. And I don't, by non-essential, it wasn't meant cosmetic surgery was canceled and everything else was on. Come on, guys, biopsies were not being done. People's cancers were not being diagnosed in time. Many facilities laid empty. The hospitals were literally empty. The medical staff was furloughed. Many hospitals' practices have faced bankruptcy over these last couple of months. Doctors I know and dentists have retired early because they can't manage this transition and this phase in the healthcare system we have. Half of the people who were having strokes or heart attacks were too afraid to go to the emergency room. So many of those died at home. You talk about it, is that a COVID death? Indirectly, it is. It adds to the total number of deaths. We'll talk about how to figure out what the death is from and so forth. But people were so afraid with major disease, they would stay home and not go to the ER. Cancer treatments were delayed. Unemployment has skyrocketed and is comparable to where it was with the Great Depression. Long approved drugs that have an excellent safety record, such as hydroxychloroquine, you've all heard that term, have been forbidden. I cannot, guys, write you a prescription for hydroxychloroquine unless I can document that you have lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. And even then, they're going to give you a 2-week supply. They are hoarding this medication. Doctors have come out and have said that it is criminal to withhold this drug. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And I want to let you know in 2 weeks, we'll do a webinar that focuses on treatment. So today we're going to focus mostly on prevention. Dr. Fauci says social distancing can't be relaxed until there are essentially no new cases. So we will not be able to return to normalcy, he says, until a vaccine or effective medication is found. Bill Gates, you know, Dr. Bill Gates, who's suddenly the leader in healthcare, says return to normalcy is possible when we have an almost perfect drug, I haven't heard of one yet, to treat COVID-19, or when almost every person on the planet, get this, planet, has been vaccinated against coronavirus. We'll talk about some of the issues with that next time. So before this happens, must our whole world live like a leper colony? Because that's about what we have turned into. Initially, the estimated death rate was extremely high. It was estimated that 3.4% of people contracting this virus would die. That would mean millions, literally millions would die. And so obviously this set about widespread panic. This has been revised down. Currently, the death rate is similar to the flu. So this virus is about as dangerous as the flu. Now, I don't remember the last time we shut down the planet because of the seasonal influenza. But this is what we're up against. The media is totally portraying this in a different light. COVID-19 is mostly a mild or asymptomatic condition. Initially, we thought it was horrible, it was going to kill millions of people, but that has not been the case. And yet, we've locked down, and now, we're being threatened with another lockdown. And it is quite depressing, to say the least. But the impact that it is having on the economy, the impact, it's literally killing people. When you have such a financial crisis, it physically, literally kills people. It kills people because of the stress, the financial losses. It kills people because they can't afford health care. It kills people because they can't get to the emergency room. So let's talk a little bit about this death rate bias and what the death rate really is, okay? So the death rate depends on the number of people who die from the disease, and the denominator being the total number of people that get infected. And guys, everywhere along the slides, I have references down. I don't make statements on these webinars unless they are scientifically validated and in published literature, okay? So let's look at the number of deaths. Initially, we have been over-reporting the number of COVID-19 deaths. First of all, it is difficult to categorize an exact cause of death because often there are multiple problems, so which one exactly tipped the person over can be medically a challenge to figure out. However, we have a bias, all right? Our hospitals, they get paid more if they label the cause of death as COVID-19. So there is a push. Doctors are being compelled to label COVID-19 as the cause of death, even if the person was never tested, and even if the person has died of other causes, okay? Personal examples I can tell you. A patient came in the other day and he was telling me that a friend of his had terminal pancreatic cancer, and he died in March, and he was called a COVID death, cause of death, COVID, okay? Cousin of mine says she has a friend in New York whose father died of a heart attack. The hospital contacted contacted his family after his death and said that we want to list COVID-19 as a possible cause of death. And they were willing to pay the family in order to get their authorization. Get this, guys. So why? Because Medicare will pay a hospital $4,600 for a diagnosis of non-COVID pneumonia. They will pay $13,000 to the hospital if they label it COVID pneumonia. They will pay $39,000 if the patient has been intubated and put on a ventilator. So there is a push. There is a bias to push people to ventilators.
There have been cases where people have had panic attacks because they're so scared, and they can't catch their breath because they're so scared. They're hyperventilating, and they get intubated, put on a ventilator, and then they die. This is gross malpractice. It is murder. It is neglect. But I'm telling you, it happened a lot in New York City. The mismanagement is just out of control. We've known from the initial infections in China, the Chinese reported this, that this virus tends to cause a state of increased blood clotting, and so people can die of blood clots from their legs going to their lungs, what we call pulmonary embolism. And yet, the recommendations for management of these patients that come from official channels do not include anticoagulation on a routine basis. In a series of initial autopsies, and that was only a small number, half of them had significant large emboli, into their lungs, and died of the pulmonary embolism. They died of the blood clots, not the virus. Okay, so that's not being handled. The ventilation is killing people. They're putting people on ventilators that don't belong on ventilators, and once you're on a ventilator, you are done for. Very little survival rate. So we've also had a gross failure, neglect to protect those that are at risk in nursing homes and other extended care facilities. That's where most of the deaths with COVID have happened. Nursing homes and extended care facilities. Half the death stats. Okay, so our death number is totally out of control, and I'll share additional data with you where I have looked at just the total number of deaths in the US, because we don't know what caused the death, but we know a death is a death is a death, right? So we look at that data. Looking at the denominator, the number that are infected, this has been another challenge, okay? So tests were developed for this quickly, and they've not been very accurate. They have been highly inaccurate. And at first we didn't have enough testing to know, or enough accurate testing to know how many people were really infected. So studies have now proven that many more people are infected and recovered based on antibody testing once that became available. And now it appears even the antibody testing underestimates the number of people infected by at least a factor of 5. Because many infected people never develop antibodies in their blood, so you can't measure them. They develop antibodies in their respiratory tract, and nobody collects and measures them. So it's now been scientifically proven that a much smaller percentage of those that are exposed actually get very sick and die than the initial estimates. About the same as with the flu. And up to 81% of the population may have resistance to COVID infection. Another study has found that 34% of uninfected people have immune cells that react to this virus because of previous coronaviruses. You see, coronaviruses, not this particular one, but others, are one of the causes for the common cold. And if you've had coronavirus cold or colds in the past, you may be partially immune to this particular coronavirus. Good, right? So that's another cause of protection. And these people, maybe these are the ones that never noticed that they ever got it. Their system simply handled it. So let's look at now the number of deaths, okay? So the very bottom bar, okay, is looking at the total deaths in the United States, January 1st through May 30th of this year. Now, why didn't I look through the end of June or to date in July? It's because death reporting tends to lag a number of weeks. So I cut it off at May 30th. We'd certainly had, peaked by then. And so we got about 1.2 million and let's see here. Right, and then when we look at the average US deaths for the last 3 years. So I took the same months, January through May, okay? And it's very close. That's the next bar, the second from the bottom. You see it's a little bit shorter. So there's about 100,000 less, okay? So yes, we are having more deaths, no question about it. Nobody's gonna deny that. The question is why, okay? So I want to show you the rest of this, and then I'll explain a little bit of why I think we're seeing this pattern. The COVID deaths are the next bar up, so second from the top. This is how many deaths have been attributed to COVID. So when you look at all those charts and what they present on CNN and so forth, that's where that is. And if you take that much away from the bottom bar, the total deaths, we kind of end up with the last 3 years average. So COVID has definitely added some deaths. The very top bar, which you're looking at, looks a lot similar to the COVID bar, right? So it's 104,000 deaths roughly. So 103,000 from COVID, 104,000 from what? This is the healthcare system, guys. This is medical mistakes, side effects of treatments, drug side effects. So our healthcare system kills this many people on an average, 250,000 people a year. Our healthcare system is responsible for killing. And coronavirus, is right along that line if we just look at these number of months. But if we add up the year, I bet you the medical errors are going to happen. So what this tells us, yes, there are more deaths, and we need to talk a little bit about where we think that comes from. Many scientists attribute this rapid peak in deaths that we saw over these last few months to the lockdown, not the virus. As I said earlier, canceled care such as biopsies and even urgent visits to the emergency room were avoided for heart attacks and strokes because people were afraid to go to the emergency room. And financial collapse is also a known cause of deaths, guys, from stress, from suicide. Those are probably minor causes. But the economists know that for, every so much drop in the economy, they're going to expect that many deaths. Okay, this is not something new or unusual. This is something we know. It's estimated that the shutdown has caused more lives than the virus itself. There's a recent article entitled, I love the title, All-Cause Mortality During COVID-19. No Plague and a Likely Signature of Mass Homicide by Government Response. This PhD, Danae Rancourt from Canada. He explains that the sharp peak in deaths that occurred following the declaration of the pandemic by the World Health Organization and the start of the lockdown, this caused accelerated deaths in those that were already vulnerable. So imagine you're in a nursing home and now suddenly you're isolated. For a while, they didn't even let these patients out of their rooms. They couldn't visit with their family. They couldn't go outside. They're already sick. So what are we doing with their immune system? We're scaring them. Their immune system's shut down. Furthermore, our measures to protect them from transmission of the virus were very poor. So in a sense, the way the system locked down, it sped up the deaths of those who were fragile because of added stress burden, both physical and emotional. So our response has been deadly. This is an epidemiologist from Stanford. All the Stanford people are known to be exceedingly intelligent. He says most people are under greater risk of death driving to and from work than from the coronavirus. I hope that helps you to breathe a little bit easier. I want to talk a little bit about how this virus is spread, right? We talk about the obsessive disinfection, the face masks, the lockdown, the 6-foot social isolation, fever screening. And I'm going to take a little poll, ask you guys a question. So first question is, have you had COVID? So if you'll feel, sorry, I know at least there's one person here who did have COVID. So I got 100% no, somewhere in there. Okay, so the majority of you guys, the far majority has not really been exposed. Okay, let's ask one more question. Do you wear a mask 100% of the time when you leave your home? And that doesn't include your car. Looks like somewhere around half and half. So half of you guys are listening to the directions you're being given, and the other half, not completely. You're probably wearing it some of the time. Okay. Thank you. So there have been no randomized studies that show advantage of a face mask. Now, you guys know that you can find either side of the argument on the internet. So can you in the medical literature. You can find studies supporting and studies countering. But there are none that are randomized, that is solid science, where they have actually cultured the influenza virus. They make sure this person has it, that is being the source of the exposure. They're not just like somebody that had the sniffles. So they know this person's for sure sick. We have for sure had an exposure. They're quantitating it. There is not a single study that says that wearing a face mask is advantageous, or even all this hand washing. We're constantly washing our hands. We're not killing all those viruses that are touching everything. There is no evidence that either of these limits the risk of contracting the disease. The mask wearing without having an acute, without being sick, has no scientific evidence behind it at all. And it's bad for people who have heart disease, have lung disease, have allergies, have reactive airways. Also the little virus particles can land in your eye. The mask is not protecting your eye. So either you should be wearing goggles, face shield, mask, and your mask should be totally airtight, because any little amount that squeeze around the corner, the virus is going to get in. This virus is spread, as other respiratory viruses are, by tiny little aerosol particles in the air. And these things are very tiny and they hang around the air. They can hang around the air for hours. And they can squeeze in around the corner, around the bend of your mask. So the mask is really not all that protective. There's no evidence for foodborne transmission or transmission through the skin. So this obsessive disinfection of surfaces, wearing a mask that are part of our reopening ritual that we've all been forced to adopt, has no scientific basis. Even with prolonged exposure on the aircraft carrier, remember in the news they had the USS Theodore Roosevelt, 4,800 people, they were exposed multiple times to one another. Over 86% never got sick. They were protected, right, by their immune systems or past exposures. The cruise ship Diamond Princess, only 17% tested positive. The others, they were immune, okay? So there's no evidence. Also, and that's another scary thought, that you can get it even if you should always wear a mask even if you're not sick, because you might still transmit it. Well, there's no evidence that those who are asymptomatic can transmit the infection. They did contact tracing in Taiwan, and they revealed a spread of only 0.7, so that's less than 1% chance of spread with pre-symptomatic exposure. That means exposure before you have symptoms. So if I have the virus and I don't have symptoms yet, and you are exposed to me, you have less than a 1% chance of picking it up. So pretty small. The transmission rate in households, so you live with me, is 5%. This is very similar to the flu. Okay, There's no evidence that generalized lockdowns save lives. There is no evidence, guys. There's no proof. About half of the deaths that we have had are in nursing homes and extended care facilities. And this group doesn't get affected by shutting down businesses because they don't go out there, roam around businesses now, do they? The 6-foot social distancing rule, that came out of nowhere. There's no scientific basis for this. It's just kind of number made up. Does that mean the virus can't go 6.5 feet? Or if you're at 5 feet, you're in trouble? There's no scientific evidence there, guys. Fever screening, totally insensitive. Totally insensitive. Doesn't even make sense to do. But you know, so many places, go to the doctor's office, they've hired somebody, just, well, okay, job creation, maybe that's a positive, who's just sitting there, standing there, taking your temperature. Totally, totally useless thing to do. So, you know, Albert Einstein, I'm a big fan, he says, blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And unfortunately, that's where the majority of our population is. We have blind belief. I want to share with you, you know, some graphs and numbers, and I'll explain them. They're all pretty simple, so please don't panic. The news media is blasting out that all heck is going to break loose, that we're going to have the second peak, and the cases are rising. So yeah, cases are rising. Masks are being mandated left and right. Okay? Why? Because we're testing like crazy. We are testing like crazy. So we are definitely, and yes, we're going to have some more cases because it's not over yet. We haven't hit herd immunity. So we'll talk a little bit about what that is. So yes, cases are rising. Okay? The deaths, look at this. Deaths are not. Okay? Deaths are not. The cases are peaking. I want to show you, this is data from the highly controversial country of Sweden, right? They're the only ones that have kind of stood alone and said, we're not shutting down. We're going to bank on herd immunity. Okay? That means enough of the population gets the virus that the virus kind of dies out and is no longer a problem. Okay? You have to hit that point. So I want you to look at these two curves, the bottom one, the blue one. All right? These are the number of deaths in Stockholm, right? So, so the number of deaths climbs, and then look at that. It's going down. And all the other countries, all of their neighbors, you know, they were like, oh, we're not having any deaths. You guys are killing way more people, okay? Now it's coming down. Now it's coming down. You know, what they have devastated themselves, their economy, and over time, the death toll's probably not going to be very different. And in the process, they have really hurt a lot of people in a lot of different ways. The curve on top is testing, and as you can see, they've also started testing a lot, and that has peaked. So Sweden, in my mind, was right. This is New York City. So this is death rate in New York City. As you can see, there is a very sharp peak. This is not typical, and they say that viral pandemics typically don't cause a peak this sharp. And the interpretation, why did this peak happen? Well, it's because we stressed everybody out with this lockdown measures, and we created situations and exposures where those that were frail, and they were going to die maybe a few weeks or a couple months later, they died altogether earlier, and we got a huge peak, and all heck broke loose. So the virus itself, yes, it was going to kill some people, it was going to kill the weak and the frail. And we'll talk about how we can fix that problem too, which really should be our fundamental approach. Their deaths were accelerated by the lockdown. So our system murdered our people. Okay, fun chart. So this is talking about herd immunity threshold. That's the HIT, okay? so not high intensity workout training. On the right is where you're seeing that. And if you look at that, you'll see that New Jersey and New York, which went crazy and had all those deaths, they have very high herd immunity. So that means they're pretty much done with this whole thing. They're not going to have a second surge or a wave or anything like that. 62% of the population is immune. Okay, so they're going to be just fine. You know, our country is like a continent because we're so big. So the states are like individual countries in Europe. So Florida was way behind, and we are seeing increases in Florida. Texas was way behind. We're seeing increases there. Ohio, we're about halfway there to herd immunity. US overall, about 15%. And these numbers are calculated very simply based on the estimated death rate, which you see there in the middle, IFR, and the total number of deaths in the population of each state. So the concept is that if we allow natural acquired herd immunity, that means people that have a good, healthy immune system, let them get the virus. Don't be isolating and blocking them off. They will develop immunity and they will protect the whole group. So if we combine this approach and we protect the vulnerable, right, especially those in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, we protect them. That's the reasonable approach to dealing with this. That's the practical approach, instead of this mass compulsory lockdown and vaccination program that's about to be implemented. This strategy was highly successful in one of the cities in Sweden called Malmo. They did exactly this. They allowed the herd immunity to develop, but they really protected their elderly. And so that city had very few deaths. So to me, that makes sense. Let's move on. So all official hopes are pinned on a vaccine. Everybody's madly trying to develop it. They're accelerating its development. But I want you to know that anything that the World Health Organization disapproves of will rapidly disappear from social media. Okay, it's like social media. I'm talking YouTube, I'm talking Google, I'm taking Facebook. If the World Health Organization does not support it, it totally disappears. It's basically called, fake news, and they turn it off. People like me are unable to voice our opinion over the internet because it is turned off. So most states now have issued orders that restrict the off-label use of hydroxychloroquine. We'll talk about this a lot during the next presentation in 2 weeks, based on studies, but those faulted studies that led to this conclusion were using known toxic doses of this drug in dying, very sick patients. If you use the normal standard doses of this medication and you treat patients early on in the course of the disease, or if they're high risk and they get infected, you treat them right away and prevent the disease. That's when it is so successful. The doctors that are using this are saying that it is criminal, it is murdering people not to use this treatment. But I told you earlier, I can't write a prescription for it if I think you have COVID. I'm not allowed. Okay? So they're interfering with the practice of medicine. They're not letting the doctor and the patient make a decision about what's best for them. The underlying reason is always this. And we don't have time to discuss how much the doctors and researchers at the CDC and the NIH will receive in royalties with a new vaccine and the conflicts of interest involving the World Health Organization. And these viruses, they're always multiplying, just as they're multiplying and they're mutating. So they change. Just as there is a new flu vaccine each year, we may be led down the path of a new coronavirus vaccine each year. Think about that. The initial suspected high mortality rate, where they thought millions of people were going to die, has given an opportunity to the money-making vaccine schemes to cash in on all the fear that the World Health Organization and the CDC have generated, and they continue to generate because of the conflicts of interest. We're all starting to understand how the boy in the bubble feels, because we're all turning into that poor little boy. Let's talk a little bit about who's at high risk, okay? Those that are over 60. Now, that's not old anymore, whatever age we approach is not old anymore. Anybody with underlying health conditions, and guys, being obese is considered an underlying health condition. Heart disease, lung disease, low immune status, whether it's from a medication you're on for a particular illness or for other reasons. There is some questions about, does having received a flu vaccine increase your risk of a more severe infection? So remember, having a previous coronavirus cold actually was protective. Having the flu vaccine may not. There's a phenomenon called vaccine interference, where having that vaccine might increase your chances of having a bad reaction here. Not solidly proved, just some suspicions. So I wouldn't take that one home. But the bottom one I would. Low vitamin D level. Low vitamin D level. We're going to talk about this, and I'm hoping every one of you guys knows exactly what your vitamin D level is. This is a time for innovation, for looking at overlooked therapies that have been neglected. Ever since antibiotics were invented, every other treatment option has been ignored and neglected. This is the time to look at the weak immune state of our population, recognize that problem, and work to improve it. Viruses are always going to be with us, and new ones will keep coming. There are many potential treatments. Should we just keep looking at investing billions, which we already have in this vaccine, in drugs and vaccines that are tailored to just one virus, which will soon become irrelevant because that virus will be gone, like the other previous two SARS viruses? Or should we focus on strengthening our immunity, calming our inflammation, putting out that fire that leads to the cytokine storm that kills us, and pursue therapies that have a broad spectrum of interference, not just against one virus, okay? That's not what we want. So let's talk about the reason you guys are all here with me tonight, the bulletproofing your immunity, okay? So going down the list, we're going to cover these one by one, okay? And as I told you before, everything that I say is scientifically validated. You'll see me listing some of the key studies supporting this issue, okay? So let's kind of start with stress, okay? I told you that stressing the elderly, I think, had a big effect on their early mortality. And stress is so rampant, leads me to another poll. So let me ask you guys to answer this one. Are you feeling more stressed since the pandemic started? Yeah. So it's not good for your immunity. Oh, good. There's a few that aren't letting it happen, but the majority of us are impacted. Okay, so like kind of 90-10. Thank you. Yeah, it's a huge problem. So going back to, let's talk about how we're going to combat this. I've had a couple of patients that have come in, and it's just like, they don't know what's wrong with them. And so I evaluate them as like, okay, I think you're okay. I think it's stress. Let's talk about these issues. We have got to do something. I think we need to do, it's a serenity prayer, guys. The serenity prayer. And if you just quote that to yourself, that will help. Take action where you can. Absolutely. Don't sit by and let them do what they will and rape you, which is kind of what they're doing to the planet. But stand up. Do what you can. stressing about it and worrying about it is not the answer. So we want to learn techniques to manage our stress. Obviously, we're going to be stressed. Some of us have lost loved ones in this. Some of us have lost our jobs in this. Obviously, some of us, the kids are driving crazy because they're home continuously. So stress is key. Breath work, practicing abdominal breathing, extremely important and highly useful. Power of prayer, the strength in meditation, they're huge. Either way, whatever floats your boat, so to speak, you need to find that and you need to find your peace with it. Guided meditation where you're listening to an audio, taking you through the relaxation steps is exceedingly useful. And if you just take 10 minutes a day and do it, that will help. Practice that. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath every hour. Take 3 deep breaths every hour. Every time you go from one room to the other, take a deep breath. It will help. Biofeedback, for those of you guys that are tech savvy, there's a great system out there called HeartMath that will help you to control your stress response. Okay? That's the key. So we can't let the stress take our immunity down further. I've given you 2 references there. There are tons of references on how stress directly impacts immunity. Immunity, guys, is your best weapon against this, not the stupid face mask and not social distancing. But they're not mentioning that. They don't mention it, and they don't let me either. I'd get out there otherwise. All right, next, sleep. You gotta get enough. People that sleep less than 7 or more than 9 hours don't live as long. Simple as that. Okay, so make the time. Dark room is important. Turn off the electronics. Avoid screen time immediately before bed. That blue light is bad. They actually make glasses that filter that out that you can use. Okay. Meditation will help you bring those hormones, stress hormones down in sleep. Certain supplements, melatonin is great, magnesium, glycine, various herbals. All of these things are natural, will not cause side effects, and will help you to sleep better. The SAD diet, what we call the standard American diet, causes increased inflammation. Remember, inflammation, cytokine storm, common cause of death with COVID-19. So what you eat, if you're eating from, the stuff on the left, you're definitely going to be inflamed. So you get more chances of developing an infection if your diet is poor, if it's processed, if it's full of trans fats, full of sugars. You get a higher rate of cancer. Just if infection wasn't enough, you get a higher risk of having allergy and autoimmunity. So there is nothing good on that left side, guys. I know it tastes good, but you need to think about food as medicine, as they say, right? So everything that you eat actually goes in and forms your body. You literally are made of what you eat. Do you really want to be made out of that pile on the left? So things you want to incorporate in your diet, herbs. I can't think of an herb that is not awesome for your health, right? You guys all have heard about curcumin and turmeric and, right? Rosemary is amazing, garlic, ginger, okay? Cloves. All of these things are amazing. The more of them you can incorporate into your diet, the better you're going to be. Fruits and vegetables, obviously key, right? With fruits, you watch your sugar load, especially if you're a diabetic, but that's where you want to get your nutrients primarily, okay? Alcohol, too much is a problem. A glass of wine in the evening is probably not going to be a bad thing for you, okay? Not that I'm encouraging you if you don't drink. Green tea, 4 cups of green tea, very beneficial, okay? Then you don't have to take a particular supplement that is made from green tea extract. So green tea. Processed sugar is obviously very bad. So, we can do a whole talk on what to eat, but general guidelines, guys. General guidelines. Think about it, okay? Fast food, processed food, bad. The way God produces food and grows it, right? If it is a plant, it's good for you. If it's made in a plant, it's bad for you. Those little simple things, they are true. You know, as another fundamental pillar of health, love this slide. I always ask all my patients, do you exercise? And they tell me yes. And then I always detail, what do you do? Because I'm sorry, walking your dog, even walking it on foot, is not adequate exercise. It doesn't do what it needs to do. Now, if you overdo exercise, can you dampen your immunity? And the answer is yes, okay? So marathon runners are known to have beat up immune system. Okay, they really push. So you don't want to be maybe running marathons this time of year with big infection rate going on, but you want to exercise, okay? Again, for optimal health. I want to show you this next, okay? 100% on top, 0% on the bottom. The percent of the US population that does not meet their recommended intake, and trust me, the recommended intake is way too low, okay? Almost every major nutrient we are deficient in, and yet most doctors will tell their patients, you don't need to take vitamins. You get them from your food, and if you ate the food on the left, you ain't gonna get nothing. Okay, so yes, we get vitamins from our food if we can maintain a healthy diet. And even if we maintain a healthy diet, the nutrient content of our food has really decreased over recent decades. So compared to 50, 70 years ago, you have to eat twice as many vegetables to get the same nutrition as your grandma did. So the nutrient content is down. And so the majority of us are deficient in 80%, up to 80% of Americans are deficient in multiple nutrients, guys. So do I believe you have to take a vitamin? I do. Okay, so let's talk about the sunshine vitamin, vitamin D. So look at this. Vitamin D deficiency known to increase the risk of acute viral infection. So if you have a deficiency, and this is known, this is a study back from 2015. This is before the stupid SARS virus was out, right? So we knew that if you have vitamin D deficiency, you're at higher risk of acute viral infection. Tell me if the CDC ever tells you to optimize your vitamin D level, to minimize your risk of influenza. What do? Get a flu shot. That's all they got for you. Get a flu shot. Okay? Another study, 2017, taking vitamin D prevents acute respiratory infections. Okay? Again and again and again. There's a gazillion studies on vitamin C that are saying that it prevents infection. Okay? Now, so you can say, oh, okay, that's a virus, but how about COVID-19? Well, recent study here, okay? I want to share this with you. On the left is people that have a so-called normal vitamin D level. Now, to me, 30 is still low. I like my patients, because most of my patients are my patients because they're not well, to have a much higher and more protective vitamin D level. But so-called normal in most of our labs here, above 30, okay? Look at your chance of death, way down. On the right, if your level's below 20, look at your chance of death, way high. So vitamin D is essential for defending against respiratory infections. In this Indonesian study, nearly half the patients with inadequate vitamin D levels died. Only 4% of those with normal, so greater than 30 levels died. That's a huge difference. This is 780 patients they looked at. And they adjusted for age and sex and, comorbid conditions. Vitamin D by itself as the only factor, if deficient, was 10 times more likely to result in death if you had a deficiency. Think about that. Have you heard about this study on, CNN yet or Fox? You're not going to. Okay? You're not going to. They don't want you to know this. They want you to wait for the vaccine. Here's another study. Okay, this is from the Philippines. Okay, you want to look at critical and severe, so the yellow on top and the gray below it. If your level is low, most people are in that severe and critical illness. But if your level is above 30, very few people are sick. So the chance of becoming severe or critical if you were vitamin D deficient was 73%. It was only 7% if you did not have a vitamin D deficiency, guys. That's a tenfold difference. Who wants to decrease their risk of dying or being seriously ill? Raise your hand, everybody, right? But CDC is not telling you this. CNN's not telling you this. Fox is not telling you this. I'm telling you this. Please listen. So let's end this pandemic. Let's decrease the risk of severe disease by 90%. Let's decrease the risk of dying by 96%. Let's take vitamin D. Okay? Amazing. And yet you don't hear about it. Okay? I don't know. To me, it's criminal. It is totally criminal what this healthcare system has become all about. That stack of dollars is what it's become all about. And not only, I mean, it is. It's to me, it's not just negligence or malpractice. I think it's murder. Talking about vitamin D. So how much do you guys should you take? If you are little, an infant, about 1,000 a day is good. They make it in drops. 1 drop equals 1,000. A drop a day, 7 drops once a week works. Okay? Children. All right. So above toddlers, 2,000 a day is a good number. If you're an adult, for kind of the average maintenance, in my experience, is somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 a day. Okay? If you have not taken vitamin D, you need to take more, guys, to build your level up. Okay? So to me, a minimum that you want to target for is 50. My ideal is somewhere in the 70 to 80 range. But the medical doctors, most medical doctors, they see a level of 80 and they panic and they tell the patient stop taking vitamin D. So that's why I'll settle and I'll negotiate and I'll say, okay, target for 50 to 60. Then your family doc will be okay with it. It won't scare them. And you'll be protected because you're way above 30. Okay? Always remember, I have to give you this disclaimer. You always got to check with your doctor before taking any supplement, even, especially if you have health problems. Okay? Now, I want to make it easy for those of you that don't have a doctor or don't have insurance and don't know what your vitamin D level is. You've got to find out what it is. Okay? How do you test your vitamin D? If you go to this link, and Jake, if you can type it into the chat box, please. Go to this link. You'll provide some basic information. We'll ask you for nothing more than a name, phone number, and date of birth. Okay. For $35, we can get a vitamin D level done for you. It is that simple. Okay. We can facilitate that. That's if you have no insurance, no worries. Okay. If you have no insurance, and you try to run it through a standard lab, they might charge you $425. So this is by a very important piece of information. If you have insurance and your family doctor, ask them to test, and it'll run under your insurance. Okay, insurance will cover it. So get that done. If your doctor tested it and told you it was normal, don't settle, please. Call, ask, what was my vitamin D level, please? Because if it was 30, they're going to tell you it's fine, it's normal. Okay, well, I don't want to be the worst student in my class. So I don't want you to have the lowest, minimalist level. I want you to have a good, generous level. So please, if you need your level checked, reach out to us. If a computer, issues arise, call the office. Okay, we will help you to get that done. Okay, all right. So now the next virus-fighting vitamin, right? Vitamin C. Another one of my favorites. So I'm talking about a few basic things about vitamin C. First of all, most animals can make their own. We can't. All right. When animals are stressed or when they're sick, they make a ton more. If we can't make it, we can't make that adjustment. So do we have to eat a ton of vegetables when we're sick? Well, bottom line, guys, is you can't eat enough vegetables to make enough to help you fight an illness. So vitamin C has been proven to be beneficial at any dose, almost any dose. There's a study looking at elderly people in the hospital, 200 milligrams a day. And they fared better, they survived better, fewer died, okay, at that tiny little dose. And there has a more, so the more the merrier with vitamin C. The oral doses can actually generate useful levels. So you don't, IV, obviously we can really pack a bang in there, way more than oral, but oral can actually be significant, all right? Significant means very useful and very helpful and potentially life-saving, okay? When you are sick, it's very interesting, you will absorb more vitamin C than when you are well. And if you can't absorb it, guess what? It gives you loose stools and you'll get abdominal cramping, and that tells you, hey, okay, I've taken the maximum I can absorb. So we'll talk about this when we come to treatment, but let's talk a little bit about C. So vitamin C has been proven, guys, proven, medical literature, published studies, there's 2 listed down below, to inactivate all viruses, every single virus. So do you think this virus somehow makes action? I doubt it. Resolve, it has been proven to resolve all acute viral infections if you give enough. That's the caveat, okay? Conventional doctors do not know how to give enough. They are afraid of it, and rightly so. They don't know about it. And if doctors don't use something, they're not trained in it, they're afraid of it, they don't want to harm the patient. So the key here is find a doctor that knows about it, okay? There are over 64,000 published studies on vitamin C on PubMed. 2 controlled studies found benefit with 6,000 to 8,000 milligrams a day for cold symptoms. I know that sounds like a lot, but trust me, for vitamin C, we use a lot when we need it, and it works great. 3 controlled studies found that vitamin C prevented pneumonia. 2 controlled studies, the kind that everybody likes, found vitamin C helps to treat pneumonia. Okay, it is pretty amazing stuff. So this is Dr. Humphreys. Dr. Humphrey says, she started treating whooping cough with vitamin C, and everybody's just exceedingly happy. And people in New Zealand have been doing this forever. It's like, we don't know. We have forgotten this information. It exists in our medical literature, but we don't know about it, okay? Here's one of the champions of vitamin C, okay? This is Dr. Frederick Klenner. In the 1940s, he practiced around the Duke area. He was a pulmonologist, lung specialist. He cured polio, acute polio infections. He cured people with viral, not just meningitis, but cerebritis, so viral brain infections, okay, with high doses of vitamin C. It's amazing what he could do with this stuff. We can't do it with modern day drug therapy, but we refuse to acknowledge vitamin C. All right, I tried to make every local doctor who was dealing with patients in hospitals in my town, Akron and Canton, aware of this data, but they did not listen. So this is Chinese data, right? They were the first to deal with this, and they said, you gotta anticoagulate, right? The blood clots. So use heparin and high-dose vitamin C is recommended, okay? This is coronavirus-specific recommendations. A number of studies, again, hospitals are not doing this except at random, a little bit here and there, but they don't know how to do it, so they end up underdosing. So let's talk about oral dosing, and we're talking about prevention, guys, and we're not talking treatment. It's going to be in 2 weeks, okay? So vitamin C for children, 500 milligrams 1 to 2 times a day. For adults, 1,000. Again, if you're higher risk, you can take more. And if your kidneys work normally, you're fine. If you have liver kidney problems, please don't do it without a doctor's supervision. Don't do anything without a doctor's supervision, okay? So have a doctor that you can trust and work with them, okay? So when I mentioned next to you zinc, they feel that hydroxychloroquine actually works because it allows zinc to get into cells. So zinc is the real McCoy. So it stops coronaviruses. It prevents them from getting into cells. It makes coronaviruses less dangerous when they do get in there. It's involved in all different types of immunity, okay? Now, quercetin, resveratrol, and ECGC, that's your 4 cups of green tea, they all let zinc into cells. So because they have banned us from hydroxychloroquine, those things we can potentially use they're not going to give us the bang hydroxychloroquine is, but hey, it's better than nothing, okay? So how do we dose zinc? Kids, 5 to 10 milligrams depending on their size, and teens and adults, you don't want to go over 50, and you want to look and see how much is in your multivitamin before you take supplemental zinc, okay? Again, same disclaimer. Selenium, okay? This is a cool little mineral because you can actually get it by eating a couple of Brazil nuts every day. And the dosage, and usually in a good multivitamin, that's how much you're gonna have, 200 for adults, okay? So you wanna look for that, again, very much required by the immune function. Another vitamin, very important, for immunity as well as lung function. So if you've got lung disease, you really wanna incorporate vitamin A, okay? The dosage, and these are very safe dosages you can do long-term, 1,000 to 2,500 for kids, 5,000 for adults, okay? Pregnant women don't want to go over 10,000. I'd probably keep it below 10,000. That's where we are concerned, but everybody else can take tons. And if you're sick, I'll tell you to take 50,000 or 100,000 all at once, okay? Here's another one for issues with lungs, okay? NAC, N-acetylcysteine. It thins your mucus if you take enough, reduces the severity of the flu, and promotes antioxidant, glutathione. Very important, okay? The dose, and it has to be generous. And again, if you got lung disease, I don't think everybody routinely needs this. If you're in good health, you don't need to go there, okay? I mentioned to you the layman's hydroxychloroquine, quercetin, resveratrol, or the 4 cups of green tea, okay? That's where, again, if you think you're starting to get it, then, do the zinc, combine the quercetin, maybe resveratrol, drink green tea, combine all that stuff, take your A, D, C, you'll be fine, okay? Again, get a doc that you can trust who can guide you with this, okay? Other things for immune support, herbals are great. You want to, melatonin's wonderful, not just for sleep, but anti-inflammatory. The cool thing about melatonin, you can't kill yourself with it, no matter how much you overdose. You get sleepy. Some people get nightmares, but in general, very safe. Some of these herbals, if you have an autoimmune condition, there is caution, okay? But in general, these things are quite safe. Again, these are secondary, as I said. So here's my primary recommendations to you guys, okay? Take vitamin D, check your level, crank it up there, okay? You really want to do this one on a level basis. Your body has to build stores, okay? Vitamin C, again, critical, high-potency multivitamin that has that 200 of selenium in there, that has the zinc in there, okay? Very important. Not all vitamins are created the same, guys. Walmart brand or Sam's brand or whatever, they're not going to be the same. So I use professional grade vitamins. There are a ton of good ones out there, and there are a ton of bad ones out there. So this is where, if you have a doc that you're working with, you want to get guidance. So those that are high risk, we mentioned the NAC, especially for lung disease, the zinc, vitamin A, your Brazil nuts, melatonin, immune herbs, mushroom extracts. So those are the things, again, not everybody needs to do these things, okay? So that kind of wraps up what I have to say to you today. And again, if you need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to our website, send us an email, okay? Office number is there. And thank you for listening. I am going to go and look into that chat box now and see what is going on, okay? So I'll be here for those of you that want to stay around and listen to any answers. If you have questions, please post them. Okay, so good. I'm just going to look down. Bob says, any difference between D and D3? Yeah, Bob, there are different types of vitamin D. D2 and D3 are the main ones that we prescribe. D2 comes as a prescription that your doctor might tell you to take every 2 weeks or twice a month or once a week. Doesn't work well. You want D3, okay? You want D3. Let me turn these slides off and you guys can see me. There we go. Okay, let's go back to chat. And which for is best coat or oil? Oh, okay, I think you're talking about vitamin D. You know, it really doesn't matter. If you're allergic to wool, you might have trouble with vitamin D, then you gotta find a vegan version. But otherwise, vitamin D is pretty good. If you have heart disease, then I recommend a different version. But for regular vitamin D, you should be pretty good. How much vitamin D? Again, as we said, for adults, it's 3,000 to 5,000 is my experience on average, but you wanna know what your level is, and that's gonna guide you as to how much, okay? So I'm really interested in understanding long-term effects of the infection. The long-term effects are going to depend on what your health is like when you first get sick, and if you have underlying problems with your lungs, if you have underlying problems with, whatever aspect, that is going to likely get affected the most. So there's not one standard. There's concern about some long-term lung damage and stuff. Obviously, if you have a nasty lung infection, you might have some long-term scarring in your lungs. Hard to say. Not to go walking. Now I want everybody to go walking. Okay. Hey, good. Not in the car. I think talking about masks there. Okay. Missed the first 12 minutes. Hey guys, again, this is recorded. It'll be up on our website tomorrow. Jake will get it there. Okay. All right, let's see, what other questions do we have? What city in Ohio? D, I'm located in Uniontown, Ohio. It's right between Akron and Canton, one exit north of the Akron-Canton Airport. Hi, Cindy. Okay. Looks like phone stuck. All right, guys, you're going to want to watch the recording. For those of you that are still with me that missed some, I apologize. All of these platforms are being so overused that it makes it hard. Good. Suzanne is better. Okay. Laura was there. Good. Okay. All right. So anybody else have any other questions? I see about 26 of you guys, 24 are still with me. Yeah, looks like, okay, let's go back. All right, any other questions, guys? Otherwise, please, if you don't know your vitamin D level, I'm going to tell you again, find out. Ask your doctor if they drew it. If they didn't, ask them to draw it. Should run under your insurance, okay? And if not, or your doctor won't do it for you, or whatever, $35, and we can do it for you, okay? If you're not a patient, we can't really give you personal advice, okay? But I've given you the general guidelines. You know what level you want to target, okay? And you can take it from there, okay? So thank you guys all for staying with me to the end, and stay well, and please don't panic. It's going to get better. Don't listen to all the nonsense that is being promoted. Think about what is going on. Think about long term. You want to improve your immunity. Long term, you don't want to live from vaccine to vaccine. We'll talk about these treatments and such, as I said, in 2 weeks, and we'll get into vaccine something later. All right.